And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is one of those really nice things that you offer that a lot of these clinics that I hear about, or we call them clinics, they just give you the card and then you have to figure it all out. But can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do with a client? You know, a client walks through the door, what happens?
Well, first, I will do a pre-screening with the patient before they even come in, so that we ensure that they are, for the most part, pretty much not wasting their time by coming in, and they're going to get their recommendation, verify that they have medical history that would warrant that recommendation. So when the patient comes in, they first meet with our certified cannabis recommending physician, and the traditional medical history. He does a review of your history and an evaluation. And once you have that recommendation, instead of just leaving at that point, which is what happens in a lot of cases, the patient has the opportunity to sit with me, and I walk them through the application. So the state card application is basically done by the time they leave, and so they know that all they have to do is wait for the approximately 14 days, and then they'll be good to go to get their product. In addition to ensuring that their application is submitted correctly, I also sit with them and go over the different literature and product information that I have available in my office from the various dispensaries that are available in Tallahassee, and work with the patient on finding out what their goals are for cannabis use, because I think that's important, is to know what exactly the patient's intent is and what their goal is. So we talk about that, and then we talk about where they want to start out, and different products that might be good for what their goals are. And so this gives them a little bit of education to prepare them for that first trip to the dispensary, because it can be overwhelming. I remember when I became a patient and I went to the dispensary for the first time, I was terrified. And this was 4 years ago, but I didn't know what to really expect. I didn't know what I was looking for in terms of product. And so it was it was very much a teach your own type process, and or teach yourself. And so my goal in all of this is to make that different, make that experience different for the patient, so that they're not overwhelmed and they're not walking into the dispensary feeling lost. I'm available to them, whenever they need, when they leave the office. If they have questions, they can text, email, call, so I make myself available to them, just to be by their side and to make sure that they have the optimal success that they can get. So,
I mean, that's wonderful. I love it. That closeness that you get with the patient, it gives them that hands-on feeling that I was talking about. And, to me, that's an important thing that we lack. The corporate approach has become very sterile. And if you don't know anything, you walk into these places, it can be very intimidating. And that's the problem that, I find a lot of the patients that I work with have, they don't know what to get. So not very many clinicians take the time to do what you do. And to me, that's just wonderful. What inspired you to do this? I mean, that's such a cool, direction to take.
Thank you. Well, it all is based on the experiences that I had as a patient first, and then as someone who was working in the dispensary. And, so that gave me a lot of different experiences, and seeing how the system works on both sides, it really kind of motivated me to bridge that gap, so that, patients have an improved experience with not only the process of getting their recommendation and going to the dispensaries, but also, giving them the best chance for success with their experience in medical cannabis. So it's all based on my experience that I had, and wanting it to be better, for my patients. So, or our patients.
I love that. That's such a humble motive, to make it better for that person. And, I was just talking to somebody about the different strains and how intimidating it can be. And, I've simplified it to a point with some of my patients where I just tell them we need something uplifting or something sedating, because there really isn't any more clarity between indicas and sativas. They've become such a blur with all that hybrid stuff that they do. So your personal experience really is important, where you can tell them a very specific product and it's going to make you feel like this. And that's something that I like patients to learn. We're actually working on something now where, I teach patients about insight. I want them to study things. So I want them to take notes, and journaling is a big part of what they do. And this is the key to it. You have to pay attention. You have to understand that's not necessarily going to make me feel the way it makes you feel. We all have something specific that we need. What we're doing is we're taking the time to understand the interaction with that substance in our body. So the terpenes and the cannabinoids and the flavonoids, and it's not just THC, guys. I mean, that's the one thing that people, they are like, oh, what's the highest THC stuff you got? I'm sure you heard that, working in a dispensary. And
every day.
Does that mean that you're going to get any more stoned? I mean, is that what makes it, sedating or really kind of a heady high? No, it's everything else in the plant. And it's that balance of it, the entourage effect, that makes it do that.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the kind of...
Well, I was just going to touch on that, the high THC factor. I mean, for a cannabis naive patient to go in and ask for the highest THC, that it's possible to even give them an experience that they're not going to enjoy and totally deter them from, any further trial and error that's required in successful treatment. So
I have some patients like that, where they had such a bad experience when they were younger, and here you mention it and they're like, oh, and the reality is, no, we're not going to do that to you. I think, the beauty is that, you and I both share the same background in terms of training. So we look at giving medicine the same way. So there's sort of a protocol, an approach that we use. And it's literally, we just want to baby step your endocannabinoid system. So we're going to give you such a small dose of THC. We're not going to hit you with 100 milligrams in the first dose and make a trip. So 2 milligrams, maybe 3. You're not even going to know that you have THC in your system. And then we'll start to build it as time goes on to a level where you might notice it if you're okay with it. But that's where the guidance comes in. And that brings me to something that you and I were talking about, which is something sort of current news here in Florida. This bill that is being floated around. And last year I got pretty upset when they did this because, THC cap really is frustrating. It's medicine, guys. So what we're doing is limiting the medicine potential for patients. And last year, that was something that we were passionate about. And here we are a year later, and bam, it's the same kind of thing. What's your view on this?
I think, I mean, I definitely, excuse my daughter.
It's all right. Co-host. Your co-host. It's your co-host.
I think, I'm all for, having appropriate regulations. And I think that, it's important that it's that patients have safe product that they can rely on and that's tested. But I think capping is not the appropriate way. And I think that if we had the ability, because I know with the recent events, we weren't even given the access to really provide the local research, from our Florida cannabis specialists. I apologize.
No worries.
Sorry. But I think that so there was a request put in to have a Florida medical cannabis specialist appear and provide testimony on the research that they've come up with, and that was denied. So that upsets me, because we need to be able to have our voices heard. And the Florida physicians they're not in support of a THC cap. And, like it's been compared to, cutting the dose allowance of a chemotherapy drug or a blood pressure medication. It just doesn't make sense to put that financial burden on the patient, because that's what it's going to end up being. It's just a financial burden.
Purely wrong, and it's exactly the point that you said. So tamoxifen is one of those drugs that they give to cancer patients. So we're going to introduce a bill now that's going to limit the strength of tamoxifen to half of its current dose. So you're literally going to have to pay twice as much money. And who benefits? The pharmaceutical companies. So last year, we identified the person who was a congressman, Ray Rodriguez, Republican, I think in Sarasota, who is now your senator out there, guys. And he's now causing trouble in the Senate, introducing this bill, and he's speaking a lot about this. So we need to write congressmen, we need to write the senators, we need to make a big fuss. If you're patients, you really need to speak up about this. And if you're a doctor or a clinician, you really need to speak up about this. We also need to reach out to our local television stations so that they pay attention to this, so that they understand, and maybe do a little investigation to find out who is funding Mr. Rodriguez to do this. Is it maybe something that we need to find out? And we're just talking about, eyes wide open and understand who's paying you. Kind of like a NASCAR driver has big, logos for the people that sponsor him. So I'm just saying, understanding that that's something I'm passionate about. So if you look at my Instagram, I have a patient that I've worked with, and he had a skin cancer. Okay. And that skin cancer was killed with THC. And it had to be concentrated, because the higher the concentration of THC, and this is in all the literature, THC kills cancer cells. Even the FDA and National Institute of Health know this. The government owns patents on cannabinoids. So this is all bullshit what they're saying. I'm sorry, but I'm frustrated. So this is where my passion comes out. So when a guy like this, Ray Rodriguez is his name, and he's a Republican senator, guys, aren't too many of them in this state. Look for him, write to him, write to your local television stations. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. So
that's your call to action for tonight.
It is.
But I mean, seriously, if you think about how hard we had to fight for flower. And so by putting a cap even on the flower, so basically you're telling the patients they need to smoke
twice as much.
So how is that beneficial to the patient?
It makes no sense.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
I read in the article
hopefully it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, the expert that they have is a doctor that's not even from the state that is speaking against this. She's known to be anti-cannabis, and she has gone on the record, and they state this in the article, that she does not have evidence to support this claim.
Right.
So they won't allow witnesses, and there's no evidence. This sounds like something else that just happened recently. I'm sorry. It's a joke. It really is.
I don't think it's the way it's supposed to be at all.
So this is where we do have to speak up. We do have to talk to one another. We do have to get our voices heard, guys. And that's all I'm talking about is make a clamor. We got them to listen last year. We can do this again. But no, that's important. And bringing this up is something that we need to talk about. Your medicine is something that helps you on a daily basis. People look at this based on a view that's 100 years old or so that makes this out to be a bad thing. Prior to this, it was a medicine, okay? Cannabis goes back, as plant medicine goes back as far as mankind goes back, okay? Understand that we're outlawing a plant. We're outlawing something that's grown naturally for nearly 30,000 years, okay? I found archaeology records where they found hemp braided rope on pottery 27,800 years ago. So that means they were cultivating hemp for domestic, purposes back then. So understand, today we look at it as a bad thing. Really? Sorry, it just drives me crazy.
Research showing otherwise.
Oh, clearly. So no,
Yeah.
there's some other good bills too. You know, you had mentioned that there was another one that was about state workers, I think. And can you tell us a
Yeah.
little about that?
So there is an employee protection bill that they are introducing, and so I feel torn on it. And I was talking with a friend of mine about it. Um, and she was saying, in a way, it represents medical discrimination, because this bill, it's a step in the right direction, I feel, because it's providing employee protection, but it's so that they can't have any adverse personnel action taken on them, because they're a patient, or due to a failed drug test. They would be protected, but this only applies to public employees. So like I said, I think it's a step in the right direction. We need that protection. Our patients need that protection, but why would we limit it to just public employees? And that's where I feel like I agree that it is kind of a form of medical discrimination, because we're going to protect some of our public employees, but private, you're SOL, and I'm not sure how that makes much sense, but
Wrong on every level.
What do
It's
you
clearly
think?
wrong. Well, it's something that when you understand that, the bias is something that you shouldn't have. Okay. So it's like saying if you have to take, a cancer medicine, same thing that we were just talking about, tamoxifen, you're now unable to work at this place. So it's an arbitrary bias that you're putting out there that does not make sense when you have medical doctors that have given them access to this state legal program. It doesn't make sense. But again, things have to change.
No.
There's a lack of consistency out there. I was just reading the chat going on right now, and we have somebody here, Michael McKenzie. Dr. McKenzie is talking about Dr. Madras. She is not a physician. She is a PhD neuroscientist, and this is the key. She is not a practicing clinician. Okay, she does not understand this.
Yeah, she's a professor, and I think Dr. Gerdman said that she used to be one of his instructors, even, and it's interesting because he is a cannabis expert, and it's like, well, why can't we bring someone like him in, So.
Well, this is, things being done behind closed doors, and when cameras are pointed at politicians, that makes them nervous because they become accountable. So this is why we have to write. This is why we have to get the television and the news people involved. And I hate to sound like this, but until it changes on a federal level, that's kind of where we're at. In terms of, the activism, that's, I guess, what I'm kind of pointing towards. But the state employees only, it just clearly does not make sense. That really got my goat when I read that also.
Yeah,
it needs to be across the board. It really does. And this is where, I spoke with somebody recently, a patient of mine who was being held up on a start date for a job, and thought it was because of that. She was a medical patient, and it wasn't, ironically. It was because of her, whatever the other medications, psychiatric tranquilizers like Xanax and Valium. So, they're looking at this and it's like, wow, that's interesting. That's kind of the opposite of what I expected. But I was telling her at that point, there are lawyers like Dustin Robinson, Mr. Cannabis Law, that specialize in this. You're in a state where it's a state program. It's a legal state for the medical program, and this is a city government. So they have to abide by state laws. So that's really understanding, that your rights, instead of getting upset, find out what your rights are. But it's crazy that a patient who benefits from this, who's shown clear positive benefit from being on this, would now be threatened. Many of the patients that I work with can barely afford medical cannabis because you have to pay, what is it, about $300 for the first visit, $75 to the state. The prices are pretty high at dispensaries. Then you have to pay for the renewal, recertification 8 months in. I mean, it just keeps going. And that's on top of paying for health insurance. and going that route also. So, it's like a double jeopardy that cannabis patients are put in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So looking at this, in terms of your background, what would you say would be a fair approach to this? In terms of a person who is an employer, okay, and knowing that people benefit from medical cannabis, what are your views on medical cannabis in the workplace?
I think that I think it needs to be handled the same way as they're handling other pharmaceuticals, and including the controlled substances. If someone goes in and applies for a job and they have a urinalysis and they test positive for opiates, oh, I have a prescription. All right, no big deal. I think it should be the same. That's
Well,
just my view on it.
I saw something in the article that spoke about if a person is a medical patient right now, they can have it, but they cannot possess it on the site that they work, which again, they can only use it at home. This is telling them how and where they can use medication. So what if they need it during that 8 or 10-hour workday?
Exactly.
It's absurd. So again, it's people who are legislating this that literally know nothing about what they are legislating. And then they won't take the advice of the people who closely work with this substance and with the patients.
Something else.
All the people that like this do is they help the black market blossom. And that's the reality here, is they just push the people that want to do this the honest way to the other way of accessing cannabis, which is through the black market. And that also creates a problem, like we saw last year or the year before with the vaping and the cartridges on the black market. So you can't have both ways, guys. And this is where they got to play a game. And this game has to be out in the open. None of this hidden behind doors. It's only going to be with our set of rules. It's nonsense. Come on the show, discuss it with me.
It is not. Yeah.
They're too cowardly to do that. But that's the point. If they won't let professionals talk to them, what exactly is the point? So, this is where we need to speak up as people in the community, and the business owners. I am a person who works with clients. I don't give the card. Your business, you give the cards to patients, but you also help them through this entire process. I mean, that with children and families, I mean, that's got to be an incredible cost as well. So something else that wanted to talk about. I'm sorry, what was that?
No, go
ahead. Okay. Actually, just looking at another thing here. Lance Sigler, Dr. Stacy Gruber, Harvard Medical School. Just a person pointing out another study that shows very positive results. I mean, there's so many studies going on right now that show the positive benefits of medical cannabis. And, this is where, you can't deny it. The tide is moving that way. And I think at the federal level, it's probably going to change. Don't know if it's going to change exactly to what we want, but they might reschedule it from 1 to 2. Not the best, but better than what we have. But this is where I think, again, understanding that the research is real and there are people out there who do benefit from medical cannabis. There was another study that we had talked about, which was, again, Dr. Sulak, our mentor from healer.com. He just published a study a few weeks ago about opioids and cannabis. And it's really interesting to see the results. Would you like to talk about it a little bit, Andrea?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. And I really appreciate Dr. Sulak's approach to cannabis. And, he's very, I think that his approach is very conservative. It's not, he's very much a start at the absolute minimum dose that's, needed. And I think that's a good thing, because less is more in a lot of ways when it comes to cannabis. But his study showed, and this study he did in, I believe, 2016 is what they had said, And 87% of the people in his study had responded that they had improved quality of life. 39% of them had completely stopped their opioid use, and another 39% had reduced their opioid use. So that, I mean, the 87% is awesome. I mean, how can you deny that? And for 39% to not need their opiates at all anymore, I mean, that's completely life-changing for some people. And Dr. Sulak's study is definitely not the first one to show results like this. And I think it's just a great example of the proof that we've got here. You know, it's coming in every day, is, you know, more research is coming in, and it's all basically pointing to the same thing, and that's this plant. It does help a lot of people, and you can't deny that.
I mean, back in the 1800s, you know, at the end of the 1800s, the formulary of medications talked about pharmacopoeia, they call it. It talked about cannabis being something that was known for euphoria, which was a good thing. Okay, and opiates also do the same thing. Then in the early 1900s, when they decided to change this and make it a bad thing, cannabis causing euphoria was a bad thing all of a sudden, while opiates causing euphoria was a good thing. Again, it's so looking at this, cannabis is something that we've known deals with long-term pain quite well without side effects. Opiates don't. They were never indicated for long-term use. They're only indicated for short-term use. My own personal experience working with patients, you know, where I mentor them on how to use this, you synergize the two. And once they get the cannabis in their system, find out that they don't like the opiates. They start to take less and less of them. And the next thing you know, they just stop taking them. They start kind of sparing them and putting them aside. And then they're like, yeah, that's too strong. I don't like that. And then they're on cannabis. And then cannabis, they can titrate down and they're clear-minded. They don't have blood pressure problems, obesity, diabetes. I could keep going on, but you know, the cascade system. Exactly. And, you know, this is natural plant-based medicine. You know, I saw a study, a story today about a professional football player who was, you know, talking about others who get closed head trauma and looking at that hidden injury and the problems like depression and suicidality that go with that. And you realize how quick and easy we could deal with that if we just were able to give them medical cannabis. We would minimize that to such a large degree. Okay, but they fear and I think the laws or the rules are changing in the NFL this year, but it's too little too late. You know, they're still not helping them. They're still not funding the research and advocating for change on a political level to make this a reality. I think the same thing with mixed martial arts. I mean, you see the way those guys take the blows to the head. I mean, really? You know, you're banning something that really has what are called neuroplastic effects. Neurogenic, meaning creates new brain cells, and neuroplastic, forming new connections. I mean, this is amazing stuff. You know, head traumas, stroke victims, things like that can benefit. I was reading a study on Parkinson's disease. I mean, you know, this plant is amazing. It really is.
Yeah.
And this is on the low end. You know, when you start to look at the psychedelics, that has an even higher magnitude of ability, you know, when it comes to the neuroplastic effects. So yeah, you know, this is exciting stuff to be involved with, you know. And,
it is.
I mean, seeing here that we're in a state that is moving to try and get, I guess, legalization, not just decriminalization of cannabis or psychedelic psychotherapy. So they're trying to get psilocybin psychotherapy legalized in the state, which would be amazing.
It would.
To be able to do that.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
a lot of people don't realize that, you know, we have something in our brain that it creates the way we look at things. So the way, like a filter that we perceive the world through. Its fancy term is the default mode network. You could call it your ego loosely. So if your mind isn't focused outside of your head, you know, it's the chatter that goes on all the time. Oh, I wonder about this. Ooh, how do I look and what do I think and what am I going to eat? And it's that noise. Okay. And that's the problem causing stuff. So when we can suppress that, and that's what cannabis and other psychedelics do is it dissolves the ego enough for us to get a glimpse of how things can be. And that's what even, you know, the medications that they give you don't do that, you know, like antidepressants and what have you. So you can't seem to recreate Mother Nature. And they tried. They made some of these cannabis, what is it, Marinol and some of these other drugs, and it doesn't work the same way. It's
Dronabinol, yeah.
Dronabinol, exactly. So it's really understanding that Mother Nature provides us with some pretty cool tools. Getting back to that basis of, you know, understanding the opiates, personally, I've seen patients benefit from cannabis as opposed to giving them, you know, all of those pills. And today, this is what I do. I teach them how to integrate it into their lifestyle. And I'm kind of thinking that's what, you know, we've talked about this in the past. That's been your passion too, is to share this word with people.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And I like to go along with how Dr. Sulak approaches it, with the opioids, and, you know, reducing, titrating them down if they can, and, you know, titrating them up with the cannabis. And I think that that's a good approach. And so that's how we approach it with our patients. So
I love that. Seriously, that's the way we, you know, we have to look at this in that systematic way, a protocol, you know. And if people want to go out and get stoned and have fun, they don't need us. You just go have fun, go do it, guys. But when people want to do this systematically and approach this in a real medicinal way, that's when they need people like us, because we take the time to break it down, to explain to you how it works, to show you so you understand the methodology behind it. I made a post a few weeks ago, and we're going to come out with a video soon, but, you know, I'm trying to share with patients who can't afford to buy medication how to make their own medication. You know, there's some CBD companies. Well, there are CBD companies that are great, but still, you know, 50, 60 bucks even is too much a month. And if more than one person in a house needs it, that's a real substantive cost. So to buy flower and to make your own products, it's really not that hard, but a lot of people don't want to do it. But over the past, 100 years or so, we've been taught to be consumers. We've been taken away from the earth and what's provided for us there. You know, I grew up with a person who, my mom was raised on a farm, and, you know, we'd be walking through a park and she'd say, Lonnie, go pick that up. And you'd pull this weed out of the ground. We'd take it home and she'd make a tea and it would soothe her stomach. And that's when I first understood, oh, okay, so that's where it comes from. And I've been fascinated ever since, you know, working in hospital settings, sick buildings. You know, I learned about different herbs and things that you can take to boost your immune system so you don't get sick all the time. You know, and here, this is what I've gravitated towards, you know, and I love this. You know, it's eventually the goal is to have people growing their medicine in their backyard. If you had an elderberry plant, a hemp plant, and a cannabis plant, you'd be set, man. I mean, you'd be set. But,
and I think I think people are starting to realize that, and I think that it's definitely a growing trend towards more holistic healing versus the, you know, the standard now of popping a pill and that'll take care of it. I think people are seeing what that method is, what it's causing, and causing more damage in a lot of cases than good. So
well, and it doesn't necessarily work. Like in mental health, you know, when we give people a you know, standard antidepressant medication, it could take up to 6 weeks to begin to work at full, you know, capacity if it works. And frequently the first attempt doesn't, so you need to take another one. And then it takes, you know, a few trials and you get it in there, and then there are usually side effects. And that's the problem, you know, where cannabis does not do that. You know, we can work with people, and I don't know what your experience is, but in mine, most of the people I work with, CBD solves their problems. And if not, small doses of THC in addition. The goal is not to intoxicate. It's to treat or medicate a certain problem, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that the approach you guys take?
Absolutely. And I never appreciated CBD, I don't think, as much as I should have when I first became a patient. And even when I was giving it to my own son, I wasn't taking it regularly myself. But when I started to, And, you know, they always say that, you know, it can take some time, and the results, or, you know, the effects aren't as profound as THC and, you know, all that. So, but I felt, for me, I did kind of just wake up one day and I'm like, you know what? This is actually, I think this might be working, because I am not as edgy, you know, I'm just not as stressed out. I just feel, overall, I just feel a little bit better. And the only thing that I could pinpoint it was the CBD. And I definitely notice when I don't take it, you know, if I run out and I'm waiting for it to, you know, come in the mail or whatever, I definitely notice when I haven't been taking my CBD. So I definitely think that it's underappreciated, and a lot of people just don't realize how beneficial it really is, because they're not feeling it right away, you know, because it doesn't have that intoxicating effect, or, you know, it's not like popping a pill that you're going to feel it in 30 minutes or whatever. So, I think everybody needs to be on CBD. That's my personal opinion, and I do recommend it to every patient that comes in.
I agree, and you know, this is where my new project, and I'm actually going to be starting a research project with. This is something I'll just give you a little peek at it. A veterans nonprofit and 5 combat veterans who have PTSD symptoms, and the goal is to take these products, which are infused coconut oil, a infused olive oil, a tincture, and a CBD RSO. And basically to choose whatever they're going to use in whatever forms. They'll get that every month. And we're going to record this over 3 months and look at whatever they have now. They're going to record their symptoms. And then we're going to take this, and every day they're going to make, you know, a journal. And at the end of 3 months, we're going to look and see what it is that they have had, you know, response to it. And basically adding CBD to your diet, not necessarily just a tincture or taking a pill. Salad dressing, or making CBD gummies, or, you know, Rice Krispie treats, or putting some CBD in a smoothie. This is the key, is to have it in your system, not just take it in a dropper or some way like that. So yes, I agree. Lifestyle is what I try to get people to go for. So,
Absolutely.
you know, it's a lifestyle change.
Well, I'll be curious to hear your results. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
You'll have to
I'm
get
excited.
you'll have to get the participants the Ganja Beach cookbook, and then they can use that to integrate CBD into their diet.
What a great idea. Awesome idea. I love that. No, seriously, that is a great idea. So no, these are things I enjoy doing, and sharing with people this passion for plant medicine has been my goal since we first met. You know, I wanted to get out there once I had that first patient who had the benefits from the skin cancer, and just tell the world about it. You know, it's just like, okay, this is too big of a secret, you know, let's get out there and make it not a secret, help people. So Andrea,
you see stories like that, you can't not speak up about it. And that's how I feel about it. And I remember that patient. I remember seeing his results on Instagram, and I was pretty blown away too. It's amazing. There's nothing else that you can say to describe it. Just, it's amazing what it can do for people. And it's just amazing that it's taken us this long to be able to have the access to it, you know? It's crazy.
Well, the science is slow to catch up to it in this country because of the laws. But the reality is, we call it a drug, and we call it a bad thing, like a drug of abuse. But in reality, CBD triggers the same receptors that the SSRIs, or Zoloft, Prozac, those drugs do. So the 5-HTP2A receptor, or, you know, they call it, you know, the serotonin receptor. So this is the point, is that it's a medicine, guys. This is what people use, and you know, the CBD alone is something that most people benefit from. But when you start playing around with the THC, and there are some people who need really high levels of it for the cancers that they have, you know, and that's the problem, is that these politicians are making laws based on whatever propaganda that they've been given. So, you know, I don't want to beat that point to the ground anymore, but, you know, I do want to share with people to speak up and to share with others, you know, their knowledge and their experience, so people have a balanced view and they understand that CBD and cannabis is not a bad thing. Andrea, I just wanted to ask you, if people want to reach out to you, if they're in your area, how can they find you? How can they get to your business?
Well, you can go to our website, cannacrusadewellness.com, and you can email me directly from the website. You can call. We are located in Market Plaza at Timberlane in Tallahassee in the Market District. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, Canna Crusade Wellness on Instagram. And my personal one is Andrea Canna Crusader.
Awesome. Guys, if you're up in Tallahassee, if you live in that area, reach out and help this wonderful young lady in her business, help them to get started and become part of this community, this cannabis community that we're talking about. So many people are benefiting from it. But I wanted to thank you for being on here, Andrea. I'm Dr. Lonni, and you can reach me on my website, drlonnicbd.com. We also have a couple other channels. We've got the Ganja Beach Cooking channel. And Chef Mary's the person who's the star of that right now. She has a cookbook. As Andrea just pointed out, the Ganja Beach cookbook is on sale. It's is it $24.95 or is there still that discount? I'm not sure if it's on pre-order still. I see the banner is there, $19.99 at ganjabeachmedia.com. And we also have Ganja Beach Nerds with Geek Baked Ricky. And every Saturday night, we're going to be doing this version of this season of Ganja Beach Medical Center. Next week's guest, we've got Stingo and Kush coming on, Australia's iconic stoner duo. And we're going to be talking about a cool new project. And this is something that's, going to be hitting the US. We're going to start recording our cartoon. I'm going to tell you guys all about this next week. Andrea, thank you for coming on the show, man. It's been great having you here. And I wish you the best. Thank you. And I wish you the best of success with your business.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you having me on here. I miss you guys. It's been forever since I've seen you guys. So
it has.
Give everyone hugs for me. I know you see them more than I do.
I certainly will. And seriously, the best of success with your business. And I hope that we are able to start doing these different shows and events again soon. It's been, almost a year since we last saw each other. So I think it was the FMCC last year. So. Until we see each other again, stay well. It has been a pleasure. And everybody that's been here tonight, thank you so much for joining us. And this has been another episode of the Ganja Beach Medical Center. Thanks again, Andrea, and have a great night, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.